He may be the world's richest man, but even Bill Gates needs a little help from his friends when it comes to ending poverty.
If the resources are given by the rich countries, lives can be saved. We know how to spend those resources in a wise way, and I think it's important for people to understand that.
His vocal and financial support of the Live 8 campaign to make poverty history exemplified the software supremo's shift in focus from amassing billions of dollars to giving them away. It had been a very different story back in the mid-1970s when, after dropping out of Harvard, he set up Microsoft with fellow school friend Paul Allen in Albuquerque. While other writers and programmers were happy to give their new software away, Bill was quick to realize that there were millions to be made in the computer business and fiercely protected his company's new inventions. Microsoft launched its first retail version of the Windows operating system. And the rest, as they say, is history. As Microsoft grew and grew, so did Bill's reputation as a hard-nosed businessman, who would regularly berate his own managers by calling their presentations stupid and suggesting they leave and join the Peace Corps. By 1994, Microsoft was doing well enough for him to afford to splash out more than $30 million on Leonardo da Vinci's Leicester Codex, a 72-page manuscript detailing the painter's theories on various natural phenomena.
People I always admired most growing up were scientists, and to me there's no scientist and artist, but certainly an incredible scientist who is greater or more ahead of his time than Leonardo da Vinci. And his singular work in so many areas is really unbelievable. And this particular codex is a really excellent example of that.
With a reported IQ of 170, Bill was also clearly ahead of his time, and he was on a mission to turn the whole world onto computers that would just happen to run on Windows. He took his crusade to France.
An increasing percentage of jobs will require familiarity and comfort with technology, and there's a lot of jobs being created in the software area and jobs in other places where those skills count. So I'd encourage people to use the computer at a young age, and it's simply a tool to increase their potential.
He also took his message to New Delhi.
This morning I gave a certificate to our 1,000th Microsoft Certified Professional. That's up from just a few hundred a year ago, and by the end of the year we'll have, we hope, over 10,000. So that's just an amazing increase, and in fact actually will move India up to be the second highest number of Microsoft certified professionals in the world, and maybe given another year it'll even get past where the United States is.
Once he'd conquered India, it was on to China to tackle the revenue-wrecking problem of software piracy.
Inside the country, the first step was to get the government agencies to license software. And I'd say in the last year there has been more of that. And so the trend is in the right direction, but there's still very, very far to go.
2 years later, he was back in China to sign an anti-piracy agreement with the government.
Instead of getting confused by the paperwork they need to do, they just go to an internet site and organize their activities, whether it's import or export. They'll always be able to follow the regulations very easily because they are using the internet.
However, all his efforts to prevent anyone else from encroaching on Microsoft's hard-won territory as the world's largest PC software manufacturer, or from cashing in on its billion-dollar turnover, almost backfired in 1998. In the case of the United States versus Microsoft, the US Justice Department contended that the software giant had breached antitrust laws by competing unfairly against Netscape Communications in the internet browser market, effectively creating a monopoly. Bill's first concern was that the prosecution could potentially block the release of his company's latest operating system, Windows 98.
Today, I stand here with leaders from the personal computer industry, united in our belief that any attempt to block the release of Windows 98 would be a step backwards for the industry, for consumers, and for the country. Because in America, innovation is progress, and progress is growth for America. Thank you.
However, Bill's assertions were met with disapproval by some in the industry.
But there's an arrogance to say that we are so important and our company is so important that if you enforce laws against us, well, you shouldn't do it because it might hurt the economy. I'm sorry, the laws are there to protect everybody and the economy and our society, and we believe in laws being applied to everybody on a fair and equal basis.
And when it came to facing examiner David Boys in court, Bill was rather less forthright. Remaining evasive and argumentative during cross-examination, he appeared to be having trouble remembering what he may or may not have said in certain communications.
Quote, do we have a clear plan on what we want Apple to do to undermine Sun? Close quotes. Did you send this email, Mr. Gates, on or about August 8th, 1997?
I don't remember sending it.
What did you mean when you asked Mr. Moritz whether or not, quote, we have a clear plan on what we want Apple to do to undermine Sun, close quote?
I don't remember.
Far from hurting Microsoft's case, spokesman Mark Murray was confident that the Justice Department would lose.
The government may think that this videotape will distract people from the weaknesses in their case, but the fact is that there is nothing new in the Bill Gates videotape, and the Bill Gates videotape will support Microsoft's position in this case very strongly.
In fact, he was wrong. The judge ruled that Microsoft had engaged in monopolization and was in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. After an appeal, however, the company was spared from being broken up and was merely compelled to share its application programming interfaces with third-party companies. Effectively, it was little more than a slap on the wrist, although Bill did also cop a pie in the face from disgruntled protesters on a visit to Belgium. After settlement was reached in the antitrust case, Bill was able to focus on the rollout of Microsoft's first foray into the video gaming market. The Xbox was the first gaming console to boast its own hard disk drive and Dolby Interactive content encoding technology. But 4 years later, it was consigned to the scrap heap to make way for its successor, the Xbox 360. The bigger and better version included a remote control, a headset to enable players to chat with opponents in online multiplayer games, a wireless controller, and a 20-gigabyte detachable hard drive. Ahead of the Xbox 360 release in November 2005, the rush was on.
I was on the internet and I found out that some other people were coming on Friday. They were joking, apparently. I thought, oh, I better get over there. So I came over here. And when I realized that they weren't coming, I was like, you know what? Doesn't matter. I'm first, and I'm going to stay first.
Of course, retail chains and store owners were just as excited about the buzz surrounding the latest gaming innovation.
Well, Xbox 360 is one of the biggest things that's happened to this industry in a long time. The two big things going on in the industry are high-definition television and gaming. And this is a gaming product that fully utilizes all the advantages of high definition, plus engagement with the net. So we think it's going to be one of the most exciting products we've had to sell in years.
And most fans agreed that Bill & Co. had got it right.
It was totally worth the wait. Now, this is one of the most fun experiences I've ever had. And this is going to be one of the next fun experiences I've ever had. So I am super, super excited. What a day! What a weekend!
Meanwhile, Bill was continuing his campaign to foster computer literacy across the planet by pledging to plow $4.5 million into Thailand's education, commercial and technology projects, much to the delight of Thailand's Prime Minister.
We are pushing forward to ensure that there is a computer in every classroom and internet access at every sub-district level of the country within the next 4 years.
Thailand had been the first country to broker a deal with Microsoft to sell Windows XP Starter Edition, a low-cost introduction to the Microsoft operating system. One hope was that offering cheaper software would help curb piracy, which had been a major problem in Thailand.
We don't expect things to change dramatically overnight, but it always starts with the government and large companies, then the medium-sized companies, and we are seeing those positive trends.
Also in his sights was the release of Windows Vista, the long-awaited update to Windows XP. 6 years in the making, it was packed with brand new features, intending to bring Windows into line with the giant leaps made in computer technology.
Everything's becoming digital, and the platform that allows people to be creative and build new applications and show off new hardware advances, that's a central element that allows it all to thrive. It's definitely a platform for innovation. We've opened it up, and already we're seeing partners doing great things.
It was tagged, "The wow is now," but some experts contended that Vista's bells and whistles didn't come without some disadvantages.
And the graphical user interface is really snazzy. And yet that comes at a price, meaning if you've got a brand new PC, it's probably going to look great. If you're trying to put this on a PC made 2 or more years ago, your PC may slow down incredibly. And so finding things may be offset by how come my typing's going slower and how come everything else is slower.
Despite the complaints about Vista's more restrictive licensing terms, lack of compatibility with other programs and high pricing, it went on to double XP's first month's sales. And journalists were asking the question, what next for Microsoft?
Well, everything we do is about software, and we love to write software, and software is going to show up in more places in your life. The phone 5 years ago was really about hardware. Now it's about software and helping you manage information. Even in the car, we're going to have software that shows you the maps and lets you stay in touch there as well. The TV set hasn't had much software, but it will as we make that, even that, an interactive environment. And so we need to make it all work together. So as you move from your car to your phone to your PC to your TV, it's customized and personalized in the way you want it.
And of course, the question on everybody's lips, how long could Microsoft keep competitors like Apple and Google at bay?
Well, we've always had lots of competitors. In the past, you might have brought up something like Sun or Netscape or AOL, and there are a lot of great companies in this industry. It is becoming more software-centric. That is, if you take, why is the Xbox 360 doing so well, or why are other people's things doing well? It's that software capability. And that's a bet that we made at the beginning of the company, that software would be fundamental. We're the company that does the most advanced research in software, and so we think that's going to pay off very well for us. But we love the competition. In some areas like the tablet or interactive TV, we're kind of out on our own. Other areas like search, people see that someone else has done a good job, and we can surprise them by showing that we can match and go beyond.
The next job on his list was the release of a multi-touch Surface computer.
When I put my fingers on, there's a camera that recognizes where I'm touching. In fact, I can touch at different places from any side of the table. And so it's actually a Windows personal computer, but with this new Surface capability.
The new Surface computer substituted a mouse and keyboard with the more naturally interactive devices of voice, pen and touch. The 30-inch display screen could be mounted under a plastic tabletop and could be used, among other things, to order from a virtual menu, finger paint, share digital photos, and get information on everyday objects. And unlike most personal computers, many people could use the Surface at the same time.
And if you're Microsoft, of course, you're looking towards adding your computing capability to a wide variety of applications. And to the extent that you can have screens at different places for for different uses. Certainly, over the long term, that would help drive demand for Microsoft operating system and other software.
In mid-2006, the man who had spent most of the past decade on top of the world's richest list made the shock announcement that he would gradually be scaling down his responsibilities as chief software architect for Microsoft. He wanted to devote more time to his role as chairman of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the charity he set up with his wife to enhance healthcare and reduce poverty. Bill's interest in charity work had been fired by the work of John D. Rockefeller, who pioneered the structure of modern-day philanthropy, focusing his efforts on causes that were largely ignored by governments and other organizations. Back in 1998, Bill and Melinda were leading the charge to establish an immunization program for children in developing countries.
I have the great pleasure in announcing that Bill and Melinda Gates have committed $100 million to a worldwide vaccine program that could save the lives of millions of children each year.
The only thing standing in the way of saving millions of additional kids' lives in developing countries is ensuring an adequate supply of new vaccines. So our program has a simple goal: to make vaccines you and I take for granted available to children regardless of where they live.
4 years later, they gave another $100 million away to India in an effort to combat the spread of AIDS. And in 2005, Bill shared the stage with fellow Crusader Bono and then British Prime Minister Tony Blair at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland to focus the spotlight on the plight of Africa.
Millions of children die in Africa who shouldn't die, it would be very easy to save. And particularly in this era where we have these great advances in science, the fact that we don't apply the resources to the known cures or to coming up with even better cures is really, I think, the most scandalous issue of our time.
Putting his money where his mouth was, he funded research into HIV prevention drugs, like microbicides and gels that could be used to block infection.
We want to call on everyone here and around the world to help speed up what we hope will be the next big breakthrough in the fight against AIDS: the discovery of a microbicide, or an oral prevention drug that can block the transmission of HIV. This could mark a turning point in the epidemic, and we have to make it an urgent priority. If we can discover these new preventative tools and deliver them quickly to the highest risk populations, we could revolutionize the fight against AIDS.
Over the last few years, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has become the world's largest transparently operating charity, with an endowment of more than $35 billion. The coffers received a sizable top-up when Bill's great friend and fellow contender for the world's richest title, Warren Buffett, donated shares worth $30 million to the foundation, which is split into 3 grant-making programs: Global Health, Global Development, and the US program. Finally, in early 2008, it was time to begin the final phase of his career transition.
I want to talk about the fact that this is my last keynote, and it's the middle of this year in July that I'll move from being a full-time employee at Microsoft to working full-time at the foundation, as you heard. And so this will be the first time since I was 17 that I won't have my full-time Microsoft job. And I'm not really sure what that last day is going to be like.
Those close to Bill Gates credit his wife Melinda for his transformation from bullying boss and aggressive businessman to the second most generous philanthropist in the world. The Dallas-born computer and economics whiz met Bill at a Microsoft event in 1987 and became the second Mrs. Gates in 1994. Since then, they've had 3 children together: Jennifer, Rory, and Phoebe, And as co-chairman of their foundation, Melinda has been widely recognized for her brains, talent, and compassion.
There's a major and worrisome gap between what happens in the developing countries versus what happens in the third world countries with vaccines. What we think of here as the basics in healthcare is very different from those in other countries. Today, there's a 15-year gap between a vaccine being developed in the developing world and when it's available in the third world countries. And that simply, to us, is completely inexcusable.
In 2005, she and Bill were named Persons of the Year by Time magazine, alongside fellow campaigner Bono.
Because they showed the world a whole new way to look at the poor and how to help them. It's not so much about pity, which is, let's ease the suffering and throw some money at the problem, but it's more about there's injustice here, let's settle a score, let's help these people help themselves.
Melinda's expertise in economics, together with Bill's phenomenal business acumen, have made them a formidable force in the new world of so-called philanthrocapitalism.
What these people are about is how can they use their money and leverage it to save as many people as possible. How can they find people who, can be saved with a $2 pill, but who couldn't afford that because they live on $1 a day. And they just bring a kind of businessman's efficiency to saving people.
Bill has also been using his businessman's efficiency and technological vision to enlighten governments on the way of the future. In a conference on advancing enterprise and the value of free trade, he spoke about the dawning of a paperless society, in which companies would rely more and more on their research and development departments to maintain a lead in their markets.
Today, most people underestimate IT breakthroughs. I have to say, if I had a choice between the late 90s, when people overestimated how quickly things would happen and thinking that changes happen overnight, or the current environment where people are somewhat underinvesting and somewhat under-expecting what will come out, I'd much prefer this environment. But as you do long-term planning for your companies and for the country, don't underestimate that innovation.
In 2006, he came in at number 8 on the list of heroes of our time, and was recently awarded the Bauer Award for Business Leadership of the Franklin Institute for his achievements in business and for the philanthropic work he now devotes himself to full-time, while still serving as chairman of Microsoft.
Well, I've been very lucky, and it's my responsibility, I feel, to take these resources of society that I've gotten and give them back in the most impactful way. And that's what's led to the creation of the foundation that my wife and I run. Kind of amazingly, my friend Warren Buffett added a substantial part of his resources to that as well. And so just like at Microsoft, the foundation has taken on very ambitious goals. We want a vaccine for tuberculosis and malaria. We want to reduce all the childhood deaths that happen in these poor countries that really isn't visible to the rich world, and the rich world hasn't put enough energy into that. And so it'll take decades to do that. It's very similar to my work at Microsoft, working with smart people, being optimistic, giving them lots of resources. So I'm thrilled I get that chance. And that's the responsibility I have as somebody who's gotten the wealth that Microsoft generated.